Greetings, my sleepy fellows. Gather close and find your place of comfort as we set out together on a journey through lands rich with ancient tales and whispered legends. Tonight, the mists of time will part, reaching the splendor and mysteries of the lonely mountain, Erebor, where the legacy of Dwarf Kings lives on in golden halls and shadowed caverns. Let the troubles of the day fade away, replaced by the gentle embrace of stories that soothe the soul and spark the imagination. If you find peace or joy in these journeys, consider supporting our growing community by subscribing, sharing, or simply joining us whenever you seek comfort and coziness. You help keep our fire burning and our stories flowing. So breathe deeply, let your heart be still, and prepare to step into the realm of Erebor, where the past awaits, wrapped in legend and waiting to be discovered. The lonely mountain, Erebor, stands resolute and majestic, its snow-capped peak piercing the clouds that gather around it like a royal mantle. Mist coils lazily down the rugged slopes, shrouding the ancient rocks in a delicate, shifting veil. The air is crisp and carries the scents of stone and pine, mingling with the faint, earthy aroma of wildflowers that manage to bloom even in the shadow of such grandeur. As you approach the mountain, the great gates of Erebor reveal themselves, carved from obsidian stone and adorned with intricate runes that shimmer faintly in the soft light of the crystal lanterns above. These lanterns, crafted with dwarven mastery, hang from towering stone pillars and cast a warm, golden glow that dances playfully across the walls, catching the veins of gold and precious gems embedded deep within the mountain's core. Shadows flicker and shift, painting the halls with a soothing rhythm, like the gentle ebb and flow of a distant tide. Venture further, and you find yourself in the great Hall of Kings, where the pillars rise like giants, holding the weight of the mountain above. Each pillar is engraved with symbols of strength and unity, guardians of the stories and legacies that live within these walls. The hall is vast, yet every detail has been crafted with care. Thrones carved from black basalt sit upon a dais of polished stone, their surfaces adorned with accents of mithril that catch the light, glinting like starlight captured within the earth. Beyond, the treasure chambers hold a splendor few could ever imagine. Mountains of gold coins, gleaming in the gentle glow of lanterns, stretch as far as the eye can see. Jewels of every hue are scattered among them, each one a brilliant fragment of color in a sea of wealth. Artifacts wrought by the hands of master smiths lie in reverent display. Jeweled helms, intricately etched axes, and delicate goblets that whisper of feasts long past. Despite the grandeur, there is a sense of serenity within Erebor, a quiet strength that comes from the enduring legacy of Durin's folk. Here, in these halls of stone and gold, every creak of the walls and every flicker of light tells a story, a testament to the unyielding spirit of the mountain and those who call it home. The atmosphere is heavy with history, but it is a comforting weight, one that cradles you in a world where magic and memory intertwine seamlessly. Deep within the heart of Erebor, 3 figures stand as guardians of the dwarven legacy, each carrying the weight of their heritage and the fire of their own ambitions. They are as distinct as the precious gems embedded in the mountain, yet bound together by a shared purpose. First among them is Durin Stonehelm, a proud descendant of the line of Durin. His presence is as solid and commanding as the mountain itself. Beside him stands Thrain Firebeard, captains of the guard and Durin's most loyal friend. His laughter, hearty and infectious, is a beacon of hope in times of darkness, but his skill with an axe is unmatched, a dance of strength and precision honed over years of battle. And then there is Lyra Gemheart, a master jeweler and a scholar of ancient lore. Her beauty is understated yet captivating, with eyes as blue and brilliant as polished sapphires. These 3, bound by their loyalty to Erebor and to one another, stand on the precipice of fate. Durin's steady leadership, Thrain's indomitable strength, and Lyra's quiet brilliance form a trio that can withstand the deepest shadows. And it is no mere coincidence that they are gathered here tonight. For whispers have traveled through the mountain, carried by wind and stone, of a darkness that stirs in the north. A darkness that seeks to reclaim the treasures and the secrets that Erebor guards. As Durin, Thrain, and Lyra prepare for whatever lies ahead, their motives are clear. Durin seeks to honor his forebears and keep his people safe. Thrain will stand as a bulwark against any threat that dares to trespass, and Lyra, with her mind ever attuned to the echoes of old magic, knows that the past and present are converging. The mountain has seen many battles, and tonight it may see another. But these 3 are ready to face whatever challenges come their way, united by the unbreakable bond they share and the strength of their shared purpose. The golden glow of the crystal lanterns flickered softly, casting long shadows on the polished stone floors of Erebor's great hall. Durin Stonehelm stood at the head of a massive obsidian table, his brow furrowed in contemplation as he listened to the low murmur of his advisors. The room was alive with the hushed whispers of dwarves exchanging worried glances, the air thick with a tension that pressed down like the weight of the mountain itself. Suddenly, the great doors of the hall swung open with a heavy groan, and a messenger stumbled in, breathless and dust-covered from a hasty journey. All eyes turned to him as he struggled to catch his breath, his face pale with urgency. Durin's voice, calm but commanding, cut through the murmurs. "Speak, lad. What news do you bring from the outer watch?" The messenger swallowed hard, his voice cracking with the strain of fear and exhaustion. "A shadow," he said, his words trembling in the silent hall. "A shadow has been sighted in the north, near the edges of the misty mountains. It moves swiftly, cloaked in darkness, and it brings with it a bitter wind that chills the very bones. The sentries say they have seen strange lights in the night sky, and whispers that speak of something long forgotten, something ancient." A heavy silence fell over the hall, and even the fires seemed to burn a little lower, as if shying away from the darkness the messenger described. Thrain Firebeard clenched his fists, the metal of his gauntlets creaking as he stepped forward. His voice, usually booming with confidence, was now low and grim. Could it be one of the old wraiths come to claim the treasures of Erebor? We have fought many battles, but the shadows of the north have never moved so boldly before. Lyra Gemheart, standing nearby with her fingers absently tracing the runes on her jeweler's chisel, felt a shiver run down her spine. Her blue eyes met Durin's, and she spoke with a steady, quiet urgency. "If it is indeed a wraith, or something worse, then it may seek more than gold. There are relics in this mountain, artifacts of power and memory that could draw such a being from its slumber. We must tread carefully." Durin's gaze darkened, and his hand tightened around the haft of his great axe. The mountain had always been a fortress, a stronghold that had withstood the ravages of dragon fire and the greed of enemies. But this was different. The shadows were stirring, and with them came the whisper of an old, almost forgotten terror. He looked at his companions, his voice strong and resolute. "We cannot wait for this threat to come to us. We must meet it head on, learn what it seeks, and if necessary, drive it back to the darkness." A hush fell over the hall as the gravity of his words sank in. The dwarfs who had gathered there exchanged uneasy glances, their faith in Durin unshakable, but their fears unmistakable. Thrain, ever the warrior, nodded fiercely. "I will ready the guard," he declared. "We shall not let any shadow cross our gates unchallenged." But Lyra stepped forward, her gaze thoughtful. "It may not be enough to defend," she said softly. "If this shadow seeks something within Erebor, we must understand its nature, its purpose. Knowledge will be our greatest weapon." Durin considered this, his expression grave but determined. "Then we must gather that knowledge," he agreed, "and we shall need allies, perhaps even those beyond our mountain." If the darkness is as old as we fear, it may require more than the strength of axes to banish it. The call to adventure had been sounded, not with the triumphant clang of war drums, but with the solemn dread of an approaching storm. Durin, Thrain, and Lyra knew that their journey would take them beyond the safety of stone walls, into lands where danger lurked and old magics lingered. They had no choice but to face the threat, for the fate of Erebor, and perhaps all of Middle-earth, depended on their courage, their wisdom, and the unbreakable bond they shared. As the shadows of the mountain deepened, Durin Stonehelm, Thrain Firebeard, and Lyra Gemheart prepared to set forth on a journey that would lead them far beyond the familiar halls of Erebor. The gates of the lonely mountain loomed large behind them, carved with ancient runes of protection that shimmered in the light of the crystal lanterns. The air was crisp and cold, laced with the scent of pine and stone, and the first stars were beginning to prick the twilight sky. Their path led them southward along the river running, where the water gleamed like liquid silver under the pale moon. The trio moved with purpose, but each step carried the weight of the unknown. Thrain led the way, his axe glinting in the dim light, his eyes ever watchful for signs of danger. The captain's normally jovial demeanor was tempered with vigilance, his senses sharpened by years of defending Erebor. His boots crunched on the frost-covered ground, each footfall a promise that he would defend his companions with every ounce of his strength. Behind him, Lyra moved with a quieter grace, her fingers brushing over the runes she had etched into the talismans hanging from her belt. Her keen eyes scanned the horizon, ever attuned to the whispers of magic that seemed to drift on the night breeze. The stories she had read, the secrets she had unearthed, all now felt like pieces of a puzzle she had yet to complete. She kept her chisel and hammer within easy reach, ready to carve protective runes if the need arose. Durin walked between them, his presence a steady anchor. His great axe, a relic of his forebears, hung across his back, and his deep eyes searched the distance. The leader of Erebor knew the weight of responsibility better than most, but he also knew that courage must be tempered with wisdom. As they journeyed, he spoke in low tones to his companions, weaving stories of old battles and victories to keep their spirits high, yet never losing his grip on the task at hand. Their first encounter came sooner than they expected. As they approached a bend in the river, a rustling sound from the underbrush brought them to a halt. Thrain raised his hand, signaling silence, and the trio listened intently. From the shadows emerged a pair of figures, their silhouettes small and familiar. Hobbits dressed in worn cloaks and carrying humble packs. The hobbits' eyes widened in surprise at the sight of the dwarves, and they exchanged a nervous glance. "Peace, friends," Durin called out, his voice calm and reassuring. "We mean you no harm. Travelers we are, like yourselves." The elder of the two hobbits, a stout fellow with a bushy beard and a twinkle of curiosity in his eyes, stepped forward cautiously. "Well met, strangers," he said, his voice warm but wary. "Name's Holdfast too, and this here is my nephew, Bertie. We were just on our way back to the Shire, if you'd believe it." Lyra's smile was kind, her blue eyes soft. "The Shire, a fair land indeed, but you are far from home. Have you seen anything unusual on your travels?" Holdfast's face darkened, and he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Aye, we've seen shadows where there shouldn't be any, and strange lights in the woods at night. Old Bertie here swears he heard voices in the wind, whispering things I'd rather not repeat." Thrain frowned, his grip tightening on his axe. "We've heard tales of shadows stirring in the north," he said, his voice low. "Best you make haste back to your land and keep to the safety of the Shire." Holdfast nodded, his eyes grateful but wary. "We'll do just that," he replied, "and may fortune favor your quest, whatever it may be." With a nod of farewell, the hobbits slipped back into the shadows, their quiet footfalls soon fading into the night. The dwarfs pressed onward, the encounter lingering in their thoughts. The hobbit's warning was yet another sign that something ancient and malevolent was indeed stirring, and their path would only grow more perilous. Their journey took them deeper into the lands of Wilderland, where the trees grew thick and the moonlight struggled to pierce the dense canopy. The forest around them was alive with the rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a night bird. The air grew heavy with the scent of moss and earth, and the river's song faded into the distance. It was then that they encountered a second traveler, an old, weathered wizard with a staff carved from ancient oak. His robes were a patchwork of deep greens and browns, and his eyes, though tired, sparkled with the wisdom of ages. He leaned on his staff as he regarded the trio, a knowing smile playing at his lips. "Ah, travelers of Erebor," he greeted, his voice warm and rich like aged wine. "I had a feeling I might cross paths with you tonight. I am Radagast the Brown, at your service." Durin inclined his head, recognizing the name of one of the great wizards. "Radagast," he said with respect. "It is an honor. We seek knowledge of a shadow stirring in the north. Do you have wisdom to share?" Radagast's expression grew serious, and he tapped his staff thoughtfully. "Indeed, shadows have been creeping where they do not belong, and whispers of an old darkness have reached even the ears of the woodland creatures. Whatever this power is, it is ancient, and it hungers. You would do well to tread carefully and remember that even the smallest light can banish the deepest shadow. With his warning given, the wizard bowed and made his way into the forest, leaving the dwarves with much to ponder. They pressed on, the path growing more treacherous, but their resolve never wavered. The heart of Middle-earth awaited them, and whatever darkness lay ahead, they would face it together, with courage forged in the fires of Erebor. As the trio ventured deeper into the wild expanse of Wilderland, the landscape around them seemed to change, becoming more restless, as though the very earth sensed the growing darkness. The moon had risen high, casting pale beams of light that filtered through the twisted branches of ancient trees. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the whispers of unseen creatures, rustling just beyond the edge of sight. Lyra Gemheart paused, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows that danced and shifted in the periphery. Her hand reached instinctively for the talismans at her waist, her fingers brushing over the cool metal etched with protective runes. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "There's something wrong here. The magic in this forest feels twisted, as though something has disturbed its natural rhythm." Thrain Firebeard halted beside her, his axe at the ready, his senses honed by years of defending the gates of Erebor were on high alert. He narrowed his eyes, peering into the darkness that pressed in from all sides. "Aye, lass," he muttered, his voice steady but tinged with tension. "I feel it too. Whatever lurks in these woods means us no good." Durin Stonehelm took a step forward, his great axe gleaming under the moonlight. His face was a mask of calm determination, but his gaze was fixed on the shadows ahead. The quiet of the forest was unnatural, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant, mournful cry of an owl. He tightened his grip on his weapon. "Stay close," he instructed. "We must keep moving. If this darkness wishes to show itself, we will face it together." Their path grew narrower, and the trees seemed to lean in closer, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that blotted out the sky. The ground beneath their feet was soft and treacherous, and the air felt heavy, as though it carried a burden it longed to release. Each step was measured, each breath careful, as if the very act of disturbing the silence would summon whatever unseen presence loomed around them. Then a sudden rustling broke the quiet, louder and closer than before. The trio froze, hearts pounding in their chests. From the darkness, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow and wreathed in a mist that seemed to cling to its form. It was tall and imposing, with eyes like glowing embers that burned through the gloom. The mist around it shimmered and shifted, and its very presence made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. Thrain's grip on his axe tightened, But Durin raised a hand, signaling for caution. The figure remained still, its gaze fixed on them, and a cold, echoing voice drifted through the air, sending a shiver down their spines. "Travelers of Erebor," the figure intoned, its voice heavy with an otherworldly weight. "Why do you tread so boldly in lands that have long been claimed by shadow?" Durin stepped forward, his own voice steady, though the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. "We come seeking answers," he declared, his eyes locked with the glowing embers of the shadowy figure. "The darkness that stirs in the north threatens more than just Erebor. It threatens all of Middle-earth. We will not turn back." The shadow seemed to study him, the mist around it swirling as if caught in an unseen breeze. "Brave words," it said, almost mockingly. "But courage alone will not save you from the fate that awaits. The shadow that rises is older than your mountain, older than your kin, and it will consume all who stand in its path." Lyra's heart raced, but she drew herself up, her fingers finding the strength in the runes she had carved. "We are not so easily defeated," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "Whatever darkness you serve, it will not find us unprepared." For a moment, the figure was silent, and then, with a whisper like the rustling of dead leaves, it began to retreat, fading into the mist as though it had never been there. The oppressive weight of the presence lifted slightly, but the forest remained watchful, as though holding its breath. Thrain exhaled, his grip on his axe loosening just a fraction. "Well, that was unsettling," he muttered. "But we're still here, still standing." Durin nodded, his jaw set. "Come," he said, his voice firm. "We have no time to waste. The shadow may be old, but so is the strength of Erebor. We will see this journey through." The trio pressed on, the encounter fresh in their minds. The forest around them felt more alive than ever, each shadow a reminder of the darkness they faced. But their resolve was unbroken, and with every step, they drew closer to the heart of the mystery, their bond a light that refused to be extinguished, even in the deepest of shadows. The forest thinned, giving way to a barren, rocky expanse that led toward the base of a jagged hill. At its summit loomed an ancient ruin, crumbling yet imposing, its stones blackened as though scorched by an ancient fire. The air was thick with a strange energy, humming with the echo of old magics and lost power. The ground beneath their feet was rough and uneven, and a cold wind swept down from the hill, carrying with it whispers of things best left forgotten. Durin Stonehelm paused at the base of the hill, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight before them. The ruins seemed to pulse with a dark, foreboding presence, and even the moonlight seemed reluctant to touch the stones. "This is the source," he murmured, his voice steady but low. "Whatever ancient evil lies here. It will not let us pass without a fight. Thrain Firebeard's grip on his axe tightened, his jaw set in grim determination. "Good," he said, his voice a growl. "I'm tired of shadows playing tricks. Let it show itself, and we'll see who stands victorious." Lyra, her sapphire eyes sharp with focus, stepped forward. Her hands moved to the runes she had prepared, the small talismans humming faintly with energy. "We must be ready for whatever it is," she cautioned. "This place is steeped in ancient magic. The air itself feels heavy with it." With a nod from Durin, the three companions began their ascent. Each step brought with it a sense of unease, the weight of the hill pressing down on them like a living thing. The wind whispered through the ruins, carrying echoes of long-forgotten battles and the mournful cries of those who had fallen. The sense of anticipation was thick. Every breath they took a measured act of defiance against the looming darkness. As they reached the summit, a deep rumble shivered through the stones beneath their feet. The shadows around the ruin thickened, coalescing into a swirling, churning mass that slowly took form. From the darkness emerged a figure clad in tattered robes of deep black, its face obscured beneath a hood. In one skeletal hand, it held a staff carved from ancient gnarled wood, its tip glowing with a sickly green light. Eyes like twin embers glared out from the darkness, filled with malice and hunger. The figure's voice was a rasp, cold and echoing as it addressed them. "You dare disturb the resting place of the Shadow King," it hissed. "You, with your petty courage and fragile lives, think you can stand against the power of the ancient dark?" Durin stepped forward, his great axe raised, the runes etched into the blade glowing softly. "We come not to cower before your threats," he declared, his voice strong. "We come to protect the light of Middle-earth, and we will not falter." The Shadow King let out a hollow, chilling laugh, and the dark energy around it pulsed outward, sending a wave of cold wind crashing into the trio. Thrain dug in his heels, his axe held firmly as he braced against the force, while Lyra's talismans glowed brightly, forming a shield of protective magic that pushed back against the dark wave. Her eyes shone with determination, and she whispered words of power, her voice steady and sure. The Shadow King raised his staff, and a crackle of green lightning arced through the air, striking the ground where they stood. The earth trembled, and stones shattered under the force, but Durin and Thrain leapt aside, their movements swift and practiced. Thrain charged forward with a battle cry, his axe swinging in a deadly arc. The blade met the Shadow King's staff with a resounding clash, sparks flying as the two forces collide. Lyra moved with precision, her hands weaving spells into the air. Her magic pulsed in time with her heartbeat, forming sigils that hovered and spun creating barriers that protected her companions. She could feel the strain of the ancient magic pushing against her, but she held firm, her focus unwavering. Durin joined Thrain in the fray, his great axe cutting through the shadows that writhed and reached for them. The battle was a dance of light and dark, steel against sorcery, as the trio fought with every ounce of strength they possessed. The Shadow King moved with unnatural grace, his strikes fueled by a malevolent force that seemed endless, but they were not without their own power. Thrain's laughter, wild and defiant, rang out even in the face of darkness, and Durin's voice called out commands that kept them united. Lyra's magic shone like stars in the night, each spell a beacon of hope that pushed back against the Shadow King's might. As the battle raged on, the Shadow King's form began to flicker, his strength waning with each blow that found its mark. The talismans Lyra had crafted began to hum more loudly, their energy resonating with the mountain itself. She felt a connection, a pulse that called to her, and with a final surge of will, she drove her magic into the stones of the hill. The ground beneath them glowed with ancient runes, and a light burst forth, bright and pure. The Shadow King recoiled, his form unraveling as the magic of the mountain rose up against him. With a final, anguished wail, he was consumed by the light, his presence shattered and scattered like dust in the wind. The ruins fell silent once more. The oppressive darkness lifted. Durin, Thrain, and Lyra stood together, their breaths heavy, but their spirits unbroken. The battle had been fierce, but they had prevailed, their courage and unity shining brighter than any shadow. The ruins at the summit of the hill stood quiet and still. The heavy darkness that had once clung to the stones now lifted. Moonlight bathed the ancient structure, soft and serene, as if the land itself sighed with relief. Durin Stonehelm lowered his great axe, its runes no longer glowing but etched with the strength of his ancestors, and his gaze softened as he surveyed the scene before him. Thrain Firebeard wiped the sweat from his brow, his chest heaving from exertion, but a grin spread across his face nonetheless. Ha! We've shown that shadow what true dwarven courage looks like. His laughter echoed joyfully into the night, filled with a pride that was infectious. Despite the battle's trials, his spirit remained unbroken, a flame that refused to be extinguished. Lyra's hands, still faintly trembling from the magical exertion, sank to one knee and rested her fingers gently on the glowing runes she had conjured. Her magic had fused with the mountain's ancient power, and she could feel the heartbeat of the land pulsing beneath her touch. A tired but satisfied smile graced her lips. "It's over," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and relief. "The Shadow King has been banished, and the mountain is safe." Durin stepped forward, placing a strong, reassuring hand on Lyra's shoulder. His eyes, filled with gratitude, met hers. "Your wisdom and magic saved us, Lyra," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Erebor owes you a debt that cannot be repaid with gold or jewels." Lyra looked up at him, her sapphire eyes shining. "We all fought together, Durin. The strength of our unity is what saw us through." She turned to Thrain, who was busy admiring the deep gash his axe had left on a fallen stone pillar. "And Thrain's indomitable spirit," she added with a smile. Thrain gave a hearty laugh, slinging his axe over his shoulder. "Aye, that's true enough, but let's not linger too long here. I could use a hot meal and a good pint of ale back at Erebor. Fighting shadows works up quite the thirst." Their shared laughter, a welcome sound after the harrowing encounter, filled the air. The trio began their descent from the hill, the ruins now a place of memory rather than fear. The forest that had once felt heavy with tension now seemed gentler, the wind whispering through the leaves in a soft, melodic rhythm. As they made their way back toward Erebor, the journey felt different. The trees seemed less foreboding. The stars above shone more brightly, and the river running sparkled as if welcoming them home. They spoke of what they had faced, of the bravery that had carried them through, and of the bond they had forged, one that felt stronger than even the stones of the mountain. When the gates of Erebor finally came into view, bathed in the warm glow of crystal lanterns, a sense of peace settled over them. The mountain, their home, stood proud and steadfast, a beacon of resilience and history. The dwarves waiting within would hear of their journey, of the threat they had vanquished, and their spirits would be bolstered by the knowledge that even in the face of ancient darkness, Erebor's defenders had stood strong. 3 of them crossed the threshold into their beloved mountain, knowing that their adventure would be told in tales for generations to come. And though the shadows had been banished, they remained vigilant, for Middle-earth was vast, and its stories were many. Yet for now, there was peace, and with that peace came a deep, unspoken gratitude for the strength they had found in one another. As the echoes of their journey lingered in the air, the trio, Durin Stonehelm, Thrain Firebeard, and Lyra Gemheart, made their way back to the familiar gates of Erebor. The mountain stood proud and silent, a steadfast guardian of their home. Though the night had tested their courage and resolve, they had emerged triumphant, bonded ever more tightly by their shared purpose and unwavering bravery. The fires of Erebor glowed warmly, casting golden light that seemed to embrace them as they crossed the threshold. The shadows had been pushed back, but the lessons of their journey would remain, woven into the very heart of the mountain. Thank you for joining on this adventure through Middle-earth, where legends come to life and the spirit of valor shines ever bright. If you found peace or wonder in this tale, consider becoming part of our fellowship. A simple gesture, like subscribing or sharing, helps keep our stories alive and our hearts warm. And so, until we gather once more under the stars of Middle-earth, may your dreams be filled with the magic of old and your heart be ever brave. Farewell for now, and know that new adventures await just beyond the next mist-covered peak.